Hi, my name is Johannes Czernin. I'm the editor of the Journal of Nuclear Medicine, and I'm here with Dr. Richard Wahl, a professor of radiology at Washington University in St. Louis. And Rich, we had prior discussions for the leadership discussion in the Journal of Nuclear Medicine, so we can kind of cut to the chase.
Okay.
We know your major accomplishments in diagnostic and therapeutic nuclear medicine, molecular imaging, especially your work with antibodies. We discussed this in our last leadership discussion, but now your life changed since you stepped down as the chair of radiology. So my first question for you is, what does your day look like now?
Well, I've retired from administration after pretty much doing it for 26 years. And then, so my day really is more focused on research projects that had been on the back burner and some that have grown. Some ideas that I'd had over the past years that I'd simply been unable to approach, given the challenges of the administrative role of running 9 hospitals and a large radiology department in where you have the tripartite mission of education and research and clinical care, with clinical care really dominating. So I really have been able to sort of get back. I've been maybe more granular than you need, but I wrote a couple of NIH grants and got a new R01 funded.
Can you tell us a little bit what the R01 is centered on?
Basically the R01 is going back carefully in animal models to some of the work we had done years ago with lymphoma, with the antibodies, which led to the 2 FDA-approved radiopharmaceutical therapies of lymphoma. But going back sort of systematically and looking at, we have many more choices of isotope now, radioisotope. We have much better antibodies. So really systematically looking at different alpha emitters with differing half-lives, different emissions, as an example, actinium and then like a single alpha emitter. Comparing it to betas, looking at mechanisms of response, efficacy, single agent, location of tumor, some of the stuff that we really should know, but we really don't know. So going back, and then I've also been doing, I've always enjoyed some of the clinical translational stuff. So we built when I was chair, we built the Center for Clinical Translational Research. So that's well suited to doing both clinical and research studies with radiopharmaceutical therapies. So I've been working there, doing some clinical work, and then running several clinical trials in collaboration with industry.
Can you tell us now how large is your team? You have, I guess, postdocs and students, grad students.
Oh, well, I mean, my team, right now, my personal team is very small compared to, what I've had in the past, but
probably more efficient when it's small.
You certainly have a better idea of what is going on, but my wet lab has somewhere like 4 PhDs, and then I have the clinical group has several study coordinators and then the services of a neuroscience at nuclear medicine, nuclear medicine technologists. And
has your research been affected in any way by the current funding cuts? Was that not decided yet? Did you have a uninterrupted funds flow?
Well, I mean, this R01 was funded in December, so it was funded before the administration changed. It's only preclinical, and it has male and female mice, and so far it's been pretty good. I mean, obviously there are across the board cuts on any new grants. The other thing I could just say, like for the university as a whole, there's substantial belt tightening, and possibly a little less access to some of our discretionary funds than there might otherwise be. So we're feeling it across the institution. Hiring has to be very intentional, and there has to be a clear funding source.
Yeah, so that's pretty similar to what we're experiencing. That a topic that keeps coming up is the change of the image of science, and in a way, I have the feeling we live in a time where science is no longer respected to the same degree that it used to be respected. let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I wonder what your ideas would be how to correct that, or how can one combat kind of this anti-science movement that is really a worldwide phenomenon.
Well, I think as scientists, and I mean, you as editor, I mean, effectively the journal is a means of communication. And I think we probably do a pretty good job of communicating to each other as professionals, but I think as a field, we probably don't do as good a job of communicating to the public what we do and why it's important. So I think we have major opportunities to better communicate. And I think, some of these other shorter methods of communication to the public, getting out there more. I mean, I think we need nuclear medicine influencers. We need to really look at how people are taking in information and processing it. We probably have been preaching to the choir a little too much. But all I can say is that cancer doesn't care if you're in a red state or a blue state. I mean, it doesn't discriminate. And I think when people are ill, and I see, a lot of my work would be seeing some patients with cancer, they care greatly that the science is being done. So, and they also talk to their friends. And so I think talking to our patients, and we're going to see more patients than we have been with the therapies, I think that also will be important to get our message out.
Maybe the one argument that is understandable also is the enormous return on investment that comes from research and from science, not only in medicine, but also physics. And, we wouldn't have all the current treatments and therapies that create enormous income and wealth for companies and for entrepreneurs of all sorts. And maybe we need to do a better job in explaining also the business aspect of science.
Yeah. I mean, several years ago when I was president of the society, we started the Marshad for nuclear medicine, and the idea on that was to invest, the limited funds we had into projects that we thought had potential to become important, impactful, and that kind of leverage would be possible to take a relatively small investment and supplement it with additional funds and have a bigger outcome. I think I'm glad we started the Marshad because, especially with NIH funding seemingly going down and down, some of these other sources of funding are really critical to keeping our field and if we don't keep our young people interested in the field, and if they don't see it as a viable way to move forward, we're in very big trouble as a field, and then more broadly as a society.
Can you comment for a moment, because I had Marshad on my next.
Sure.
Can you comment for a moment on the structure of Marshad and what actually the very specific aims and goals of this program are?
Well, the initial idea behind the Marshad and the name the Marshad was that we wanted to, one, come up with funding mechanisms to help seed innovative pilot grants of what might be considered higher risk but potentially high reward science that you get preliminary data to move to the next level. That was the thing. And the Marshad, I mean, there's been this cancer moonshot, but the Marshad kind of came out of a paper of what are the 3 to 5 greatest opportunities in these different areas that nuclear medicine covers, and how could we figure out a way to invest in those? And that was published in the journal. It needs to be updated, but there were all these great opportunities, but there wasn't money to move them ahead. And it was pretty obvious that if you got all these great ideas, you need to have money to try to move it ahead. And the Marshad, again, back to the moonshot, Marshad was, it's pretty much a big thing to do, but it's not impossible. The moonshot we've done 50, 60 years ago, but going to Mars, I think it's possible, but I'd like to, you need to have a somewhat audacious goal to take our science at that level to a feasible but achievable goal.
You have the Marshad was your brainchild for how much about it, and did you have in mind that should be basic research, translational, or clinical, or all three of the above?
Well, I think well, there is a continuum, and it wasn't only going to be basic. I mean, that was my vision. Obviously, these things have to evolve, and it continues to evolve. But the major focus was on science, and it wasn't as much on education, because a lot of the society already has a lot of the education in hand. So it was trying to boost innovative science, and that could be clinical science. It could be really early translational. It could be basic. But it was more focused on the science, and there's been there's some of the projects that some of our donors, and we've really been fortunate to get quite a few donors, and we'll be, I think, talking about how many millions we're up to now, which is, and I when we came up with this, I said, well, let's try to raise 100 million. I think that could have an impact. We're not there, but it's in sight. If you have very good classes. But the Mars shot really was trying to get innovative science, but that innovation can take a variety of forms. I mean, some of our science has been like, how do you get some of this technology out to rural America? I mean, that's innovation, but of a different type. Than let's say, here's a new molecule or here's a new labeling process. So I think innovation is broad in its context and not just preclinical.
So coming towards the end of this discussion, we have seen a tremendous growth of nuclear medicine like diagnostics recently. The industry buying in, and you see the size of the exhibitor this year's meeting is gigantic compared to what it used to be. How do you see the next steps in nuclear medicine to become an even more important player in some precision medicine and individualized treatments and really moving towards curing some cancer?
Well, there's a lot of steps, but I mean, I think the first thing is the fact that there is commercial excitement and appeal, because to really move this thing forward, we need industry partners, and only good science can only go so far. You need to figure out how to translate it to practice, and really that's best done by a handoff to industry, I think, for any large-scale healthcare delivery. And then, as academics, I think we tend to want to have perfect. Industry may be more practical in terms of good is good, and that might be more feasible. So, these hands-offs to industry, the additional investment, I think are critical. I think as a field, we still need to grow our workforce. One of the exciting things we'll be announcing is yet another alliance with an Oregon-focused research group. I don't think I can announce it till Monday, but a partnership with a major disease-oriented group. We already have a partnership with the Lobular Breast Cancer Foundation, and have been able to leverage our money with their money to make impact in specific diseases. I think those kind of ability to nuclear medicine to reach out and become integral in the management of a lot of these other diseases where we haven't been will be critical. So, tumor boards in hospitals that nuclear medicine runs or is always a part of, I think are critical. We have a theranostics tumor board at WashU, which is important. Our seats at the table, nuclear medicine are the PIs. We need to increasingly integrate ourselves in all aspects of, this is particularly cancer, but I just want to make one other thing. The Mars shot has probably raised more money and distributed more money for cancer grants, but we have grants for the brain. There's projects that are being announced for the brain and for other applications. So there's many opportunities, obviously, beyond cancer, but cancer is an easy story and it's understandable. And we have been more successful in raising funds in that space.
So a question that keeps coming up is who is going to do what, or who is doing what? What is radiation oncology going to do? What is nuclear medicine going to do? What is urology or uro-oncology going to do? And my take on that is that whoever is competent to doing it can be doing it or should be doing it. Industry takes a very radical approach sometimes now, suggesting that there should be outpatient settings where technologists will treat patients, and then so that pretty much everybody can dispense the drugs because it's very safe and there's nothing much to it. What do you think about all these different concepts about who should be doing what with them?
Well, one thing, there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So I think figuring out ways to be efficient, just like we have in radiology, to figure out how to have safe throughput, is going to be important. And I think there's a whole bunch of questions in that space, but I think we need competent people. These patients are sick, and they often are sicker, when you treat them late in their illness. So there's a lot of, I think we're going to have to look at care models like oncology has with therapeutic teams that include physician assistants or nurse practitioners and nurses and physician extenders. I think we have to figure out how to do this. It's not, I think we have to evolve as a field in terms of developing those efficiencies. And our reimbursement mechanisms, with so much of the money that's in the field, in the drug, and relatively little under current fee schedules to the physicians, we have to figure out reimbursement models and payment models, which are more like probably oncology. So, I think we have to rethink the widget model, but patient safety is critically important. If you look at radiation oncology, they're not out there irradiating patients, and there has to be radiation oncologists on site for a reason. They don't let the technologists just, treat patients, even though that technology is in advance. And I think nuclear medicine has to be there. The reality is many radiation oncologists are doing this. My opinion right now is that many of them don't have the level of training one would want for more sophisticated therapies. And I think we have to get more sophisticated if we're going to move from palliation to cure, which I'd like to see the field do. So I think it's going to take a big workforce. There'll probably be different boards and different competencies, but nuclear medicine needs to be more patient-facing, and training has to evolve. So there's a lot of stuff to do.
So my final discussion point, the question for you is, do you know JNM Editor-in-Chief position is has to be identified, or we have to identify a new editor-in-chief? We need a succession plan. What's the profile of the new editor-in-chief that you would like to see?
Well, the Journal of Nuclear Medicine has historically been the leading scientific journal in the field. And I think someone who wants to maintain that and even elevate it further, I think would be important. Because it's a very credible journal. But our science it doesn't exist in a vacuum. So I think being able to figure out how to communicate to all who are interested in nuclear medicine, broadening the consumer base, probably to radiation oncologists who are doing nuclear medicine or some aspects of this, to try to get oncologists more interested in the articles, publishing more, probably more clinically, and having probably mechanisms beyond the print journal and the digital journal of short communications. I know this is being done, podcasts, that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of mechanisms to do it, but I think core to it is you need an editor and an editorial board who value the science and truth and quality, and are not afraid to in editorials challenge the status quo and suggest what might need to be done. And the reality is, given all the economic changes, and we have to stand up for our field, and we have to stand up for science, and we may have to be out there advocating things that are maybe at variance with what current practice is, because going from, we want to be better than palliation in our therapies, we really want to move to cures. How do we get there? Why aren't we there? And then how do we interface with teams and large healthcare systems? So I think a little more on the health economics will be really good for the journal, given money seems to be is transforming our field, but we want to transform so that our patients end up doing better.
With this, I want to conclude this discussion, and thank you very much for your time and your insights of all that.
Oh, well, it's so good to see you, and thank you for the wonderful job you've done as editor. All right.
Thank you.